Hello one and all, class is back in session, so thank you for joining me today for another lesson on lore from the world of Aetheris. Last week we went to the Far East to discuss the lore of the samurai, which was a lot of fun, but this time we're going to be heading back up north to discuss our first tanking job, Dark Knight. So let us start off with the question, what is a Dark Knight? Well, the devoted Ishgardian clergy guides the flock, and the devoted knights protect the weak. Yet even the holiest of men succumb to the darkest of temptations. None dare to administer justice to the sacrosanct elite residing outside the reach of the law. Who then defends the feeble from the transgressions of those men meant to guide and protect them? A valiant few take up arms to defend the downtrodden, and not even the holy priests and knights can escape their judgment. Pariahs in their own land, they are known by many as Dark Knights. In the year 960 of the 6th Astral Era, a commoner by the name of Tryphonil the Unsawed was granted knighthood for acts of valor upon the battlefield. A young man with an unwavering sense of justice, Tryphonil's desire to champion the cause of the lowborn was undaunted by his entrance into the privileged world of nobility. It was this same moral fortitude that bid him trail after a clergyman after witnessing the robed figures drag a squirming child from the alleys of the Broom. The knight's suspicions were confirmed when he entered the secluded domicile of the priest, only to find him committing unspeakable acts upon the body of the abducted child. Noticing his unexpected visitor, the clergyman attempted to explain away his vile actions as a form of exorcisms, but the incensed Tryphonil drew his sword without hesitation and answered the babbled excuses with a single fatal blow. Rather than praise his heroism, however, the knight's peers condemned him for slaying a holy member of the church. He was forced to defend his life in a trial by combat, but though he survived it, it was decreed that he would be stripped of his knighthood. Unflinching in the face of accusations that he had fallen to darkness, Tryphonil roared that he would gladly surrender a title that required him to turn a blind eye to a child suffering. He cast aside his crested shield, the symbol of his station, and continued his crusade for the common folk with no thought or fear of what others held taboo. His righteous deeds inspired some courageous few to embrace the path of the forbidden, and thus the legacy of the Dark Knight was born. The Dark Knight is a tanking job that uses traces of magic, much like the Paladin, but the difference is that instead of using holy magic, they use dark magics to infuse their blades to strike down their enemies and defend their allies. This magic comes in two forms, one of which is pure darkness, and the other is known as the dark arts. For darkness, arising from fear and wrath within the Dark Knight's own soul, the shadowy flame feeds greedily upon her body's ether, its Stygian fires coursing through her blade and fueling her Idric's arts. But as ever, such power comes with a price. Should the Dark Knight lose control over this darkness, she will be consumed in a backlash of entropic energies. As for the dark arts, it's fueled by the darkness from within. The Dark Knight employs these techniques to lend an arcane edge to the blows of her greatsword. Though known for their disdain for shields, the fighting style of the earliest Dark Knights was nevertheless built upon mundane swordplay, and it was not until several centuries later that one of their own order first unlocked the secrets of the dark arts. So the darkness itself is like a shadowy flame that can be used to strike down enemies from afar, while the dark arts is a certain way of being able to infuse your blade with a dark power to be able to strike down your foes, or to create shields to protect yourself. As for the best equipment needed to bring out the full power of the Dark Knight, they are often seen in dark, spiky, and rather intimidating-looking armor. Traditionally, the armor was forged of Ishgardian or superior types of steel with a faint nimbus of shadow to add more of a supernatural look to it, again used as a form of intimidation. But because the Dark Knight is oftentimes the one taking the most damage in battle, their armor has to be thick and heavy, so it does come at cost to one's freedom of movement but superior defenses. As for the weapon itself, while it is said that a Dark Knight has used other forms of weapons in the past, the most common form would be with the greatsword. These blades are so large and heavy that only one with a lot of strength could even lift such a weapon, but even then, one uses two hands on the handle. Since the blade is thicker as it nears the tip, giving the weapon a top-heavy balance, which in the hands of a true master, this awkward weight can be exploited to generate swings powerful enough to cleave through even a dragon. And because this blade was forged with sufficient resilience to endure repeated blows, it is incredibly hard and difficult to damage. So now let us look at a few tricks of the trade involving the most iconic abilities of the Dark Knight. And we're going to be starting off with the limit break, Dark Force. By infusing a vast well of ether with her own inner darkness, the Dark Knight forms trance barriers of impregnable midnight. The sight of liquid shadow pouring from a sky torn open is this otherwise benevolent technique is commonly described as unsettling. But we do have other such abilities such as the Hard Slash, which is a sweeping slash, followed by a punishing upward slice. The most fundamental attack in the Dark Knight's repertoire, this technique originated from a now antique style of knightly combat. Unleash is releasing his pain and rage upon nearby foes. The Dark Knight manifests as an inky black circle of spikes on the ground around him, and those caught in its thorns are struck by unsensing terror and an irresistible need to claw away its source. And then there's the Living Dead. This dark art allows the practitioner to continue fighting through the most heinous of injuries and exhibit an immunity to pain usually attributed to the shambling undead. Though undeniably effective, abandoning one's corporeal form to negative energy in this manner, however briefly, is an act fraught with mortal peril. The job of a Dark Knight is to suffer and to sacrifice. They need to make sure that others do their jobs correctly because sadly, even those in the church are not immune to corruption. In fact, it's those who hold the most power that tend to abuse them. And it's oftentimes the lowborn who are at their weakest and lowest points that tend to suffer the most for it. A Dark Knight is there to make sure to do what is right, and that those whose job it is to protect others don't get carried away with their own ambitions. Those who are in a position of power are oftentimes starting off with the best of intentions, but they need the power that their stations command to carry them out. But in time, they tend to become drunk on that power and they can't bear the thought of giving it up. They come to think of themselves as untouchable, and in time, the good intentions become bad ones. That is why the Dark Knight, much like the Reaper, is there to ensure that such people don't remain in power, and to see justice carried out. Now, I will refrain from speaking too much about the job quests if you haven't played through them yet, but I will be giving a brief description of some key characters who are noted figures in helping us through the journey. An orphan of the broom, a young Frey was set on the Dark Knight's path when his future master found him plotting revenge over the body of a friend unjustly executed by Holy See officials. Proven adept and inquisitive, Frey approached both the book-bound and physical aspects of his training with equal eagerness. It was the desire to aid his master and the fiery Cittergu in their duties that truly drove the youth to excel. Alongside his volatile fellow disciple, Frey later succeeded in rescuing the maiden Rael from an undeserved fate, but would himself fall afoul of her pursuers. Dragged before the tribunal for trial by combat, the Dark Knight fought with skill and righteous rage, only to fall to the dancing blade of the court's champion. It is a testament to Frey's devotion to life that those he left behind that his soul crystal would burn with such undying intensity. As a child, Cittergu lived with his family in the frontier town of Othard, until their settlements fell under the subjugation of the invading Garlean Empire. Unable to endure the stifling reign of their conquerors, his parents bundled him into a cart along with their meager possessions and fled into the wilderness soon after his 6th name day. For 5 years they wandered, seeking a place to belong, before their journey eventually brought them to Eorzea's shores. Like many of their race, they found themselves drawn to the plains of Coerthas, where they hoped to adopt the nomadic ways of their ancestors. But neither fate nor the Ishgardians were kind to the Al-Ra. Molded by the life of tragedy, the displaced child found himself well suited to the mantle of a Dark Knight. Now bereft of family, master, and fellow apprentice, Cittergu wears his stern demeanor like a suit of armor, impenetrable to all perhaps but his young charge Rael. As for the journey to becoming a Dark Knight, best of luck to you is all I can say. It's not like there's a school out there to learn these arts, so one must acquire some kind of a teacher. But also, you need to be careful should you find one of the soul crystals. These seem to have a bit more life compared to others, almost like they have a mind of their own. Playing around with darkness is never safe or easy, so let this be a warning to you all. The moment you choose to pick up the great sword and walk the path of darkness, you must always have your soul on guard, because the moment that you let it down for even a second, then that darkness will not hesitate to run you over. And in some cases, the brighter the light you shine, the greater the darkness that is lurking within you. And that will be it for right now. Thank you all so much for joining me today for today's lesson on the lore of the Dark Knight. It's definitely more on the edgy side in terms of jobs, but hey, it has got to have some of the best stories in Aetheris, so if you haven't played through it yet, you really should. It is so good. But anyway, I do hope that you're all looking forward to the next lesson, which once again is going to be a surprise, but until next time everyone, class dismissed.